Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest narration of the web series The Human from a Dungeon. If you're new to this series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 64, Nick Smith, Adventurer Level 7, Human American. Once we finished our lovely breakfast and checked our gear, we began our hike to the dungeon. Blythe stayed behind, claiming to be useless in both fighting and long walks. He acted pained when nobody argued with him. The hike itself didn't seem that difficult at first, but my body felt heavy for some reason. I'd slept fine, but still had to stifle more than a few yawns as we walked. In contrast to my fatigue, the kobold seemed to get more and more excited as we approached the dungeon.
"We get rid of suckers, then you can meet the Lord," the kobold said excitedly. "He's gonna be so happy."
"Who is the Lord exactly?" Nash asked.
"The Lord is the Lord."
It tilted its head in confusion.
"Knows lots of magic, speaks in heads, can't die."
We stopped marching and all of us stared at the kobold with blank expressions. Nothing was coming to mind based on that description, but something that knows a lot of magic and speaks telepathically doesn't sound great. Not to mention that kobolds seem to worship it. Yuk gently cleared his throat. "Kobold, does your master have any skin?" he asked.
Yeah, I think. Wait, yeah, he does," the kobold said excitedly, then paused and rubbed his chin. "Doesn't wear it a lot, though."
"Sounds like a lich," Gladdy said nervously.
"Don't know that word. What is a lich?"
"One of the greatest crimes against nature ever committed by a mortal," Mako explained sternly. "Arrogance and ambition, culminating in being of pure evil and spite."
"Too many don't know words."
The kobold crossed its arms angrily.
"But the Lord isn't evil. He helps kobolds a lot. Nobody else helps kobolds. Shitty people think we're trash. Farmy people think that we're a nuisance. That Lord teaches us new stuff, heals us when we get hurt, and even tells us when we do good jobs. The Lord never hurts kobolds. So from my so me thinks that shitty people be way more evil than the Lord."
"Well, perhaps your Lord isn't a lich," Mako said. "Or maybe he's a lich that likes kobolds. I suppose we'll find out." "How did you and your Lord survive the vampires?" I asked as we continued our trek.
"I was sick when they came. The Lord said me ate the wrong kind of swimmer," he explained. "The sucker didn't push the secret rock, so I didn't get to die for the Lord, and the sucker captured him."
"Why didn't the vampire kill your Lord?"
"I already said the Lord can't die. One time we thought he did when some of the ceiling fell, and we were super sad about it. Then he came back 3 days later and was mad because we'd stopped working and made a big mess. He didn't hit us, though, which was nice. Most lords are smacky happy, but that's not good for a good workplace."
"Conducive to a good work environment?" I offered helpfully.
"Yeah, not conducive to a good work environment. Instead of smacks, he made us apologize and clean up after ourselves. Then he gave head spats, ear screeches, and fish for the bread. Really good bread, too, no green stuff on it."
"Well, coming back from the dead is a big indicator that the guy's a lich," Gaddy said. "Kobold, how do we know that your Lord isn't going to attack us once we defeat the vampires?"
"'Cause he's not gonna. The Lord doesn't hurt helpers."
We stared at the kobold, expecting him to elaborate further. He stared right back at us, seemingly confused by our hesitation. After a few moments, Gaddy sighed in exasperation. "Fine, let's go," he said as we turned. "Wait," I interrupted. "What's your name?"
"Me?" the kobold asked.
"Yeah."
"Smith is what me is called. Don't mind being called kobold, though."
"You don't?" Gaddy asked.
"Nah, reminds me that I'm the last, which also means that I'm the best."
"Sure," Gaddy said as we continued. "You're the best by default. Why not?" "You can't count past 7, though?" Mako asked with a grin. "I would think that the best kobold would be able to count to 10.
"I don't know what comes after 7,
Smith said. 8, I added, trying to be helpful. 8 what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
"Who's 9 and 10? Why did 7 eat them? How do numbers eat things?" Smith sighed louder. "I have had these questions for so long and nobody ever answers."
The realization that the kobold was caught up in a pun made me hesitate. "Wait, did you translate that right?" I asked 10. "Yes." How is the pun in more than one language?
I'm an artificial intelligence, not an entomologist.
What does studying bugs have to do with anything?
No, and that's an entomologist. An etymologist is the study of words and their histories.
Crap, I grumbled to myself. There it is, Galli said. That's the entrance.
We stopped in front of the mausoleum that was made entirely of polished tan-brown stone. It reminded me of my grandma's counters, which were made of fake granite. The mausoleum had 2 columns on each side of its entrance, which was lacking any sort of door. The sun made it impossible to see past the entrance, though, as if the mausoleum had a door of darkness protecting whatever was inside it. Above the entrance was a carving that depicted 2 winged beings kneeling to a skull. At first glance, I thought they were angels. Closer inspection revealed them to be an armored owls. The skull didn't have any pointed teeth, so it was probably elven too.
Oh, I get it now, Mako said. Right, the skull is because of the lich, Rebus added. Makes sense.
How does that make sense? Ithrim asked. Surely this dungeon is older than the lich.
How do you figure? Haino countered.
Well, most monsters within the dungeon were spewing out of it at some point, right?
Ithrima looked around for assurance.
Am I the only one who thought that implied that someone stopped the monsters, like the lich and kobolds? There were baddies before the Lord, Smith added helpfully. The Lord said that they were making crappy people come, so he killed them all. My daddy helped.
So how can the skull be referring to the lich? Ithrima demanded smugly.
It's obviously not native to this dungeon.
Gods grant me patience, Rebus sighed. Why are you thinking this carving was always like this?
Liches are as magical as they are megalomaniacal. So why in the hells wouldn't he change the carving to suit himself?
Are we going to argue or are we going to get to work? Nash asked. We're burning daylight.
Like that matters, Rebus laughed. It's darker than the crack of my arse in there.
We'll have to walk back unless you plan on camping in the dungeon.
A nasty smell wafted from the dungeon as to prove Nash's point. Mako chuckled as Rebus sighed. Fine, let's go. Yulk, Ithrima, and Elmira, you'll be in the back with Galli and the kobold. Nash and Nick are in the center, supporting whoever needs it. Mako, Hino, and I will be in front, Rebus said. Remember, the goal is to stop their movement and whoosh them.
Won't the fire make breathing a problem? I asked.
A light wind spear should help with that, Yulk said. I'll do it. Don't want the tunnel collapsing. Yulk winked at me as everyone else prepared their gear. Rebus and Hino strapped their shields and unsheathed their swords. Nash hefted his axe while Mako examined his pike. Galli played with the string of his bow, trying not to look as nervous as I felt. I drew my sword.
There's a lot of dead kobolds in there, so mind the stench, Galli said. Let's go.
I trailed behind Nash as we entered the dungeon. As soon as I entered, the hairs of my arms and the back of my neck stood rigid. The air was full of the stench of death and the sense of dread. Stifling my instinctual urge to panic, I cast light. Everyone else activated their lights too, and we began our grim march down the hallway.
Careful, traps, Mako said.
The big orc began lightly pushing his pike on the tiled floor until we heard a click. A moment later, a grate with spikes fell from the ceiling. Nash let out a low whistle as the trap receded.
Not the usual fare for dungeon traps, he said.
It's around these parts, Mako replied solemnly. Calcutan dungeons are much more dangerous than the dungeons in the chiefdoms, and it isn't because of the monsters. I say.
The traps have been here since I was born,
Smith said.
Can avoid them by stepping around them.
We don't know where they are, Mako countered.
Me help.
Smith's feet pattered against the tile, and his wagging tail grazed my leg as he ran past me. He also ran past Nash, but Mako stopped him with a massive hand. The tiny kobold looked at the massive orc with obvious confusion.
If you're in front, you'll be the first target for a vampire, Mako explained. How about you ride on my shoulders and point out the traps instead? When we see a vampire, you can hop down.
That's a long way up,
Smith replied. Don't know if I can jump down from there.
I'll help you get down, Nash said.
Smith looked back and forth between Mako and Nash and then shrugged.
Okay.
Hino smiled and Rebus chuckled as the kobold, who was noticeably shorter than the dwarves, climbed Mako Mountain.
Mako helped the lizard up, and Smith sat with his legs on either side of Mako's neck. It reminded me of my cousin with his kid. We continued on until we found the first kobold corpses. The rank stench of the air threatened to make me puke. I held my nose as we pushed past, but breathing through my mouth didn't help at all. Smith pointed out another trap, and we slipped past it. Then we ran into more dead kobolds. This pattern repeated itself a few more times before Smith sighed and pointed to one of the kobold corpses.
That's my daddy. If I didn't get sick, I'd have been right next to him. Maybe it made a difference, but the Lord said I wouldn't have. Guess the Lord knows best.
Do you want to say goodbye? Mac asked.
For why? He's dead.
Smith tilted his head.
Can't hear when you're dead, right?
I suppose not, Mako said glumly. Hey, Smith, how old are you? I asked.
I'm 3 years old.
The reptilian grinned.
Almost grown up.
I almost told Smith my age, then realized his response would probably be questions about who's in and why did you eat them. Instead, I turned my attention to Rebus, who let out a low whistle. That explains so much, the dwarf chuckled and shook his head. When do kobolds become adults?
I don't know,
Smith replied with a shrug.
Let's keep moving, Mako interrupted. Actually, it would be best if you stopped,
Smith said with an odd tone and a vacant expression.
The vampires know you're here. 2 of them have come to greet you. Prepare yourselves, hunters.
The fuck? Rebus said.
There's very little time before they reach you. I am the being this one calls Lord, speaking to you through my only remaining vassal. Get ready. They come.
Mako knelt a little, and Nash grabbed Smith from his shoulders. We began to hear soft thuds of footsteps just as we prepared our weapons. Rebus and Hino prepared their shields, and Mako hefted his pike. Nash and I took positions behind the 3, ready to intercept any vampires that got through. Gally cocked his bow, and Ithrima, York, and Elmira prepared to cast their spells. Smith looked up at us and shook his head in confusion.
What's happening?
He asked.
The vampires are coming, I said. Get behind me.
Smith stared for a moment, then scampered towards the rear of our formation. We waited as the footsteps grew louder, prepared to see vampires leaping out the shadows towards us. Then the footsteps stopped. I couldn't see them, but I could feel them watching us, like the creeping feeling of panic when your nightlight goes out as a child, when you just know there's something in your closet and under your bed. When you get older, you're able to tell yourself that you're imagining it, and there's nothing there. But this time, it's not my imagination. Really? Rebus asked. You just gotta watch us? The big bad vampires are scared to have a real fight? The pair of pale dwarves stepped out in the darkness. They were wearing tattered clothes, and their fingers ended up pointed claws. Cruel, fanged grins were plastered on their pasty faces. We're not the ones who should be scared, one of them said. I almost couldn't follow its movements. The moment it finished speaking, it rushed towards Rebus. The other vampire rushed towards Mako. Moving just as quickly, Hino stepped in front of Mako as the orc's pike snapped the vampire that was after Rebus. Mako hefted his pike upwards, with the vampire skewered upon it as Hino's sword flashed briefly in the light. The vampire slammed into the ground in front of me, and we made brief eye contact as Nash's axe fell. The heads of both vampires rolled in opposite directions on the floor. Quick, pile them up, Gaddy said. Gotta burn them. I stomped the vampire's head with my boot, and a wave of nausea smashed against my gut. Fighting it, I picked up the head by its hair and tossed it onto the body that it had been attached to. Hino and Mako tossed the pieces of the other vampires on the pile. I swallowed heavily and held up my hand. Le beref to sack. Intense heat flew from my hand and enveloped the pile of vampire parts. Eerie screeching and a smell of burnt meat filled the air. The knot in my stomach twisted further as I watched the bodies convulse. That's what it would look like if Rebus, Hino, and Gaddy, unable to fight it any longer. I turned away from my party and spewed my breakfast onto the tiled floor. Well, that was easier than I thought it would be, Rebus said, tactfully ignoring my display. Let's hope it remains that way, Mako said coldly.
Why the human puke?
Smith asked.
Did he eat bad swimmer?
End of chapter.
I would like to thank our T5 members and patrons, Casper Arnholtz, Jon Creighton, W.R.E, 050, Dragzoon W.R.E, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.